Hello, Public Works and Transportation Committee Chair and committee members. I am Steve Howlett, Assistant Director of Public Works, and this item is the Tree Program and Landscape Standards Update. Recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee receive and file an update of the citywide tree program and landscape standards. Background for the Parks Division trees. The Parks Division of the Public Works Department is responsible for maintaining 36 parks, 1.7 miles of Oxnard Beach, the citywide street landscapes that includes the public rights-of-way, over 32,000 trees, and conducts citywide graffiti abatement of city-owned properties and within the adjacent city's rights-of-way. With the passing of Measure E, effective April 1st, 2021, funding was identified to begin addressing the long-deferred tree maintenance. The annual operating budgets for the Parks Tree Subdivision was approximately $1.25 million in fiscal year 21-22, $1.5 million in fiscal year 22-23, and $1.3 million for this fiscal year 23-24. The parks developed and implemented a plan that started in fiscal year 2021 and 22 to address many years of deferred tree maintenance. The implementation of this plan included developing a 5-year grid pruning cycle for all city-maintained trees, awarding a grid pruning contract, awarding a separate on-call tree services contract, and contracting with consulting companies to provide assessments and recommendations for all city trees that includes a separate hazardous tree assessment with mitigation recommendations for the eucalyptus trees. Both the grid pruning contract and the on-call tree services contract serve both the general fund trees and the special districts trees. However, task orders for the special districts trees are issued separately and invoiced separately to ensure each district is only charged for the trees that are identified in their formation documents. Special Districts Division trees. The Special Districts Division of the Public Works Department is responsible for 50 assessment districts containing 17 parks, street landscapes in several districts, and over 15,000 trees throughout all of the districts. However, some of these districts are underfunded or partially funded due to the requirements related to the assessment changes that were brought upon by the approval of Proposition 218 in 1996. Therefore, some of the LMDs, Maintenance Assessment District 4 and the Waterways Assessment District 1 and 2 have not been able to perform routine maintenance of their landscapes and trees without a change in their assessment via a vote of the property owners or registered voters as applicable. Landscape standards. The landscape standards were last approved by the City Council in 1988. In response to water restrictions, state regulations, and the changing climate, it has become necessary for the city to update the landscape standards for both new commercial, industrial, and residential construction, as well as provide guidelines for residents and businesses to renovate their existing landscapes. Discussion. The Parks Division grid pruning. Staff addressed the deferred maintenance with the citywide general fund trees through the development and implementation of the 5-year grid pruning plan. One of the challenges of developing this plan was not having accurate tree inventory data because the last comprehensive inventory was done approximately 15 years ago. Due to the lack of reliable data, staff made certain assumptions to formulate a plan that will grid prune over 32,000 general fund trees within a 5-year time frame. This plan does have some flexibility built in to accommodate for unanticipated changes or delays. The first year of work, which was fiscal year 21-22, focused on all 6,646 arterial street trees throughout the city, which you will see shortly as attachment 1. The grid pruning plans for years 2 through 5 is to trim the remaining general fund trees regardless of planting location category, i.e. residential, parks, secondary trees, parking lots, etc., starting from the eastern side of the city and working west. So this picture right here shows all of the trees that were grid pruned along the arterial streets in the first year of the grid pruning. And you will notice the amount of trees that were done in South Oxnard, because I will refer to that again in a moment. In year two, fiscal year 22-23, the number of trees that were grid pruned was 5,027. This was lower than our goal because the tree services were shifted to complete the hazardous tree work, i.e. the eucalyptus trees, before the specified funding expired. There were 101 eucalyptus trees removed in addition to 285 eucalyptus trees that were trimmed. For year three, which is our current fiscal year, the target number of general fund trees to be grid pruned is 7,061, in addition to 10,840 trees that are being pruned by the Special Districts Division. The fiscal year 23-24 grid pruning map, which you will see in a moment, shows in green all of the trees that have been completed in years 1, 2, and 3. The remaining trees that will be completed by the end of April 2024 are shown with a gray dot, and the trees that will be completed by the end of this fiscal year, which is June 30th, are shown in gray. The red circles of the map show the remaining areas of the city that will be grid pruned for fiscal years 4 and 5. So here is the map that I am referring to. Everything that is in solid green has been completed. Although this does not include the arterial street trees map that I showed you earlier, because that would make this map even more confusing. However, shortly I will show both maps side by side. But again, the solid green are the areas that have been done. The white circles with the gray dot are going to be done by the end of April, and all of the remaining gray dots will be done by the end of June of this fiscal year. The areas that are in the red ovals will be done in fiscal years 4 and 5. Based on the current funding levels, it is anticipated that the 5-year grid pruning plan will be completed on schedule. However, due to the term of the existing grid pruning contract, staff will need to rebid this service in order to complete year 5. The costs for grid pruning are expected to increase with the award of the new contract. Special districts grid pruning. During the preparation of the district's budgets for fiscal year 23-24, the property owners within the districts expressed their strong desires to include tree pruning within their neighborhoods. As such, staff worked with the current grid pruning contractor to develop a schedule to service approximately 10,840 trees that are located in most of the LMDs and many of the CFDs. The estimated total cost for this grid pruning within the special districts is $745,000. Each district is responsible for the funding of their trees per their formation documents. Staff also developed a 5-year project schedule for each district that will reflect the city's 5-year grid pruning cycle in perpetuity, subject to available district funds in the future. The communities of Harbor Island, which is Waterways Assessment District 2, St. Tropez, LMD 11, Greystone, LMD 23, The Point, LMD 25, and Cameroon Ranch, LMD 49, did not receive grid pruning services this fiscal year due to the inability to levy the additional funds necessary through the annual levy process, because the maximum annual assessment amounts for each district. However, these districts have requested the grid pruning services for the next fiscal year, which is 24-25, and staff anticipates being able to fund these remaining 650 trees through a combination of both available funds within each district's new fiscal year budget and available funds within each district's reserves. Consulting services for tree assessments. In January 2022, the city completed a tree program review and assessment that was conducted through a contract services with Dudek. This report provides recommendations for addressing existing maintenance needs, as well as ways of making our citywide tree program more resilient and sustainable for the future. This assessment helps solidify the 5-year grid pruning plan, as well as providing tree recommendations for the new landscape standards. In January 2022, Dudek also contracted to identify and assess and prioritize the eucalyptus trees that are located within the public rights-of-way in some of the general fund parks. In recent years, some of these windrow trees have fallen, which also resulted in some claims against the city. The recommendations for mitigations were to either remove, trim, or increase the level of assessment for each specific tree. In fiscal year 22-23, 101 eucalyptus trees were removed and 285 were trimmed. Additionally, 78 dead standing or high priority trees of various species were also removed. All of these trees were in the public rights-of-way and some in the general fund parks. Based on available funding, staff will continue to address the remaining lower priority trees over the next 2 years. Staff has observed that many of the eucalyptus trees throughout the city continue to decline. The goal is to have consultants who specialize in urban forestry continue their regular assessments of the remaining eucalyptus trees. Therefore, as a best management practice, the eucalyptus trees will be assessed approximately every 2 years by a third-party certified arborist. During a recent eucalyptus tree assessment that was performed by Rincon Consulting, 1,100 trees were assessed by certified arborists that specialize in this type of risk assessment. Of those assessed, 139 were identified for removal by December 31st, 2024 of this calendar year. A page from this assessment district showing the trees at College Park is included in the staff report, which I will show you in just a second. The priority 1 trees that are identified in red will be removed by the end of this calendar year. The priorities 2 through 4 require specific maintenance, mostly pruning, within a time period between 6 months and a year. The non-priority trees are identified as NA and are identified in purple, do not have any current maintenance needs. So here is the map that I was just referring to, and you could see just a couple of trees highlighted in red in the bottom right, and then on the right side, it looks like there's 4 trees slated for removal. You can see, however, that there are many trees that are purple, which is NA, or priority 4, which is green, which are the 2 lowest priorities, and you'll see that those run along the highway and also through the center of the park. These were the trees that were previously maintained after the last assessment, and therefore they're in good shape. Finally, the city has been awarded a U.S. Department of Agriculture urban forestry grant in the amount of $958,000 to fund 100% of the tree inventory costs for disadvantaged communities and 50% of the tree inventory costs for non-disadvantaged communities throughout the city of Oxnard. The required 50% match from the city has been encumbered in our current parks operating budget. Staff received notice that the city will receive the grant funding by March 31st, 2024. At the time of writing this report, the funding has not been received. In an additional update, we reached out to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and they confirmed that the funding will actually be received by the end of June 2024. The scope of work that will be provided for this grant includes the citywide tree inventory with a level 2 risk assessment of each tree utilizing LiDAR, which is laser 3D imaging technology to measure the canopy shade coverage citywide. The funding for the removal of an estimated 600 priority trees, and provide urban forestry management training for staff. A level 2 risk assessment that will be conducted as part of this grant is a 360-degree visual evaluation of a tree where the crown, trunk, root, flare, and above ground roots and site conditions are all evaluated by a certified arborist. The data that will be collected during the tree inventory will include information for individual tree GPS locations, the species, dimensions, an arborist health assessment, which is the level 2 risk assessment, and various other data points. This information will provide staff with the needed clarity on the tree count, the locations, and the condition of each tree within the city's urban forest to create and manage the city's urban forest management master plan. The landscape standards. Staff from both the Public Works Department and Community Development Department began working together in fiscal year 22-23 to revise the outdated citywide landscape standards. With the assistance of Jordan and Gilbert Landscape Architects, staff hosted 3 community outreach meetings on April 6th, 2023, May 25th, 2023, and June 8th, 2023. Based on research, consultant recommendations, state mandates for landscaping and water use, and the resident and contractor input from the community outreach meetings, staff has started drafting the revised landscape standards, in addition to developing 3 separate plans for demonstration areas that are based on these new landscape standards. These demonstration areas will provide the community with actual landscape improvements within the street landscapes that apply to the practices that are identified in the draft landscape standards. The next steps for this calendar year are to present the draft landscape standards and the demonstration plans to both the Planning Commission and the Parks and Recreation and Community Services Commission. Invitations to the commission meetings will be provided through social media, as well as direct invitations to the attendees of the community outreach meetings. Once the draft landscape standards and demonstration area plans have been reviewed by both commissions, they will be presented to the Public Works and Transportation Committee with recommendations from both commissions and the community. Financial impact. There is no financial impact to this item since it is a receive and file report. However, on this slide, I wanted to show you both the year 1 grid pruning for the arterial street landscapes along with the current update. This shows the total amount of trees that have been grid pruned within the past 3 years of the city, of this cycle. And again, the areas that are highlighted in the red ovals are the areas that are remaining for fiscal years 4 and 5. So that concludes this staff report, and staff is available if you have any questions. Thank you.